All right, Chapter 3, Winlink Gateways. For those of you who have started the journey with us, in Chapter 1, we were talked about how to set up Winlink, the basics, how to activate the Winlink account, and the easiest ways to send a message. Obviously, you only need to do a connection to activate it, but sending a message gives you that reassurance that it's actually going through. In Chapter 2, we talked about peer-to-peer networking and why that's really crucial to understanding how Winlink works. And it's also important as a training tool, and it's the ultimate fail-safe. If all else fails, as long as you have a computer and a system, you can actually pass traffic. We find that the peer-to-peer nets are extremely valuable for training because it gives you a chance to all be on air at the same time. And if anybody runs into issues, then you can address those as you go. All right. Today, we're talking about gateways. So you've set up Winlink, you've practiced some peer-to-peer with a friend, you understand how that works. And now we're talking about gateways. And before we get into gateways and how to use those and how that's different from peer-to-peer, let me point out a couple of things. This is how Aries LAX looks at the world. It may be different in your area, depending, but there are a couple of core EmComm operating principles that we adhere to that guide our way of sending traffic. Ultimately, Aries LAX serves hospitals. So we have a very specific mission. And the county expects us to send this traffic, and the hospitals expect us to send this traffic. But we live in earthquake country, we live in fire country, and for those of you who have driven in LA, you know that's crazy too. So let me just bring you a couple of EmComm principles for us. One, if you did not bring it, you don't have it. We do support quite a lot of races, and that's been one of the cornerstones. There's no running to HRO. If a big earthquake hits, everything will be down. And our assumption has to be that whatever we think we may have is really only what we have in our houses, in our apartments, maybe in our cars. So keep that in mind. So if you didn't bring it, you don't have it, means be prepared. Simple is better than complicated. In amateur radio, there's always more than one way of doing things, and people fall in love with one way of doing it or another. At the end of the day, the cutoff is there a simpler way of doing that? Because everything that adds additional steps may give you marginal benefits, but it also adds points of failure. The simpler things are, the easier it is to handle complex environments. As amateur emergency operators, radio operators, we deal with complex environments, not really complicated environments. The difference is, of course, that a complex environment keeps changing as we are working with our systems. And as the incident evolves, as the disaster moves on, and we may have to make choices that we didn't think of before. If you have a very complicated system, you get stuck. If you understand that simple is better, you can cut out steps and make it more effective in a response. And in our larger exercises, we found every time we cut something out that proves not to be really necessary, it makes for smoother traffic flow. Number 3, if it's not portable, it's expendable. And I know for some of you, that'll be, oh my God, what is he saying? Because, quite a few of you and quite a few of your groups have expended a lot of time, money, and energy in repeaters. We're talking about gateways today. They're costly to run and set up. And if you say something like that, then you have to understand where this is coming from. In a large earthquake or in a fire, you may have to evacuate a hospital. You may have to evacuate your home. And I want to point out that no equipment is ever worth your life. What matters is you, the operator. It's not the equipment. And so if it's not movable, if it's not portable, then leave it behind. During the Paradise fire, some of you may be familiar with the wind system. Ron in Paradise, who's been really a fantastic person. He's helped many hams get started in the hobby asking questions. But his home was overrun by the fire, and he had one of the most fantastic stations, but it was all gone in that fire. So have a go kit, because even if you have to go to a shelter, you'll have a radio setup, you'll have a computer, you'll have a Winlink station that you can bring to bear. It'll be better for you to actually say, hey, listen, I can contribute to the effort, to the recovery effort as well. So keep that in mind. If it's not portable, it's expendable. So everything that's even at a hospital here, we say, if we can't bring it with us, count on it not being there. That also means we bring our gateways to events. You carry your own gear where you don't have any Sherpas. So you may build this wonderful large box. If you can't carry it up 3, 4, 5 flights of stairs where you may have to set up, and that has happened for us, probably rethink your system. One of my mentors in amateur radio, first time he brought his Go kit, it was so large, it had to fit into one of these large bags. And on the way out, it literally broke the card it was on. And he said, okay, I need a radical reset of this. And the next time he came in with an attaché that had all the equipment he needed. And he's been operating with that ever since. So also think about it in terms of a modular system. Sometimes you just need to grab your VHF, UHF gear. Sometimes you want to have your VHF and your mesh. Sometimes you bring your all-in-one radio, you know, like an 857 or an IC 7100, and that will do the trick. There may not be any infrastructure left. This is one of the core principles. In SoCal, we're extremely lucky that we have these large repeater systems, that we have many repeaters locally as well, that we have high sites. But what if they're not around anymore? What if they're taken out by fires in Ventura County during the fires? Some of the sites that they had that actually have been crucial to the initial response, because they had mesh equipment and video cameras on there, burned down. That does happen. And so think about it this way, build from the ground up. What happens if none of your infrastructure is there? Can you rebuild and mount a response? And then finally, one of the principles is on VHF, we expect our people to be up and running in 15 minutes or less. If you can't set up a VHF stations, including the signal link and all that in under 15 minutes, that causes a rethink, or should cause a rethink. And we're happy to help people to achieve that. And it's actually pretty easy. Most of us can do it in less than 8, some in less than 5. And if your K6NHA, my better half, she can do it in about 2, because she's got this cool little Go kit that she opens up, throws up the antenna, and flicks a switch. All right, Aries LAX network flow. Let me show you this real quick, because for those of you who were here last week, that looks utterly familiar, doesn't it? That's the peer-to-peer network, if you think about it, right? So here we're taking it as a gateway. And
Oliver, you're muted.
thank you. I just need to minimize the video here so I can actually see the slides. But here's the thing. Our network flow doesn't change whether there's a gateway or whether we're doing it peer-to-peer. It's the same network flow. What changes is how we move the traffic in terms of how it's addressed. The beauty of a gateway, of course, is, in this case, that we still have the VAR-FM, the ARD, and the packet, but it can go through a gateway, and the single gateway can handle it even without user intervention. So before you called the other station, you said, hey, listen, I've got this traffic, I'll send it your way. Or the other station, and in this case, W2JCL, would have had to switch between the different sessions. And we'll show you that again in a moment. But with a gateway, you can just leave the gateway running and people can come in and wait for a clear frequency and send their traffic. And the nice thing is they can do it on VARA-FM, on Arden, Packet, and on HF, because gateways support HF just as well. And then the station here, W2JCL-10, can just download it locally and hand it over, in our case, to the Mac, or in your case, it could be an EOC. The other nice thing about it is we can actually link gateways with networks like Arden Mesh and so on in the field, and we've done that in our last exercise. We actually connected 2, 3, 4 gateways using Arden Mesh. And that, of course, opened up different, it increased our circuit capacity because we could direct people to go to a certain gateway and deposit their messages there, and it was synced through all the other gateways, and it didn't matter where you picked it up. Very powerful tool if you have people trained and who know how to set this up. Of course, from the gateway then, you can also forward it to another area, out of area gateway, and I picked Doug here, N0DAJ, it could be K6SDR, it could be KO00000, or it could be any of the other fantastic gateways, N5TW, that you can actually take the traffic, the local traffic, and move it outside, or move some of the traffic outside if you need to. And again, from there it goes to the internet and then to any other email address. As a reminder, everything on the left here is pretty much going to be your local disaster response. So also understand that the farther left you are, the more bandwidth you have available. Once you get to HF, your bandwidth shrinks, and we'll come back to that. So you need to think down the line when you're sending things outside. A couple of digital mode tips that we found very useful and how to make the most out of it. Upgrade to a better antenna. The single biggest improvement is your antenna, especially on VHF, UHF. If you have a decent antenna, makes your life easy, and good antennas do not have to be expensive. One of my favorite antennas for field deployment is actually the N9TAX. It's $30, comes with extra cable. I pop it up on the spider beam, and I can put it up anywhere between 5 and 7 meters, and it's rock solid, and it's moving traffic, really sensitive, and we're working really well with it. Of course, you can use a spider beam then to also run your HF antennas and so on. So but just keep in mind, the fewer equipment, again, the simpler you keep it, the easier it is. Lower your power. Digital modes do not require a lot of power. 20% power is usually enough, sometimes 50% if you absolutely need it. But for those of you who've done FT4, FT8, you're utterly familiar with that. You don't want to run this at 100% usually, because it's also in the long run damaging to your rigs. And we don't want to damage our equipment, because if the equipment's gone, well, what are we going to do, right? The other issue here is audio levels. It's really important to set your audio levels. The biggest error people make when it comes to connection, or why they don't connect, is because their audio is too hot. If you have a TNC, you're probably familiar with setting your deviation. But if for any of the sound card modes here, the audio levels need to be set properly, and it's usually better to have it a little bit lower than you expect than too high. 5 minutes in digital traffic is considered a long session. Generally, our operators would not send anything past 5 minutes. Most of them will start questioning whether the connection is valid after 3. For 2 reasons. One, if you're on there spending a lot of time sending traffic, you're actually taking up circuit capacity from other people that need to get in. And the other thing is, you're running at 100% duty cycle. So you're actually putting a lot of strain on your rig, and more importantly, on the gateways. Keep that in mind. So 5 minutes is an extremely long session. We recommend you keep traffic between 1 and 2 minutes. That's where most of our traffic is, and Vara, of course, makes that much easier because you can cram more traffic in a shorter amount of time. But let me give you a counterexample. Somebody here decided to send a picture not too long ago through a gateway on packet, and it happened to be an image, and it happened to be 100 kilobytes. That took 20 minutes to upload. And then the other station that it was addressed to used the same gateway and downloaded it also for 20 minutes. That's 40 minutes that gateway is out of commission for anything else, for an image. And that's something that's just not a good habit to be getting into whenever you want to get into emergency communications. Get on air, pass your traffic, move off the air, because other people need to send. And we've got 70 hospitals to support. And if you can keep it under a minute, 2 minutes, then we can move traffic a lot faster. So keep that in mind. After 5 minutes, you should question your session. That's also true for HF, by the way. And good rule is keep your messages under 5 kilobytes whenever possible. And that is also true when you're using Vara, because sometimes with Vara you can send multiple messages, but we tend to keep our messages under 5 kilobytes, and we tend to use templates whenever we can. All right, fun part. Winlink gateway messages and sessions. So this was from one of our exercises, and on the right-hand side, that's Robert K6YZF, and he's one of our main gateway sysops. And that's his Go kit on the right, and mine's on the left, the little computer, and you can't see the radio because it's hidden behind me. Gateway messages and sessions. If you want to send something through a gateway, in the message you have to select Winlink message. Last time it was peer-to-peer, remember? And you have to make that selection here too. And in the session, you have to choose a Winlink session. Last time, it was a peer-to-peer session. And again, I want to point that out. People say, well, it's all Winlink. Yes, it is. But the distinction there is one is called Winlink. That usually refers to a gateway. And the other one's called peer-to-peer. Once you have that in your mind, it'll be very easy to go forward. Winlink messages. Here's a sample message. And let me remind you, unlike last time, the peer-to-peer messages, here you can actually send messages to oops, where did my mouse go? Here you can send messages to any internet address as well as call signs. And by the way, you don't have to do call sign at winlink.org. If you're sending to another ham, just the call sign will do, which makes your life a lot faster. Let's go through this again. Number one, you enter the recipient address. Again, you have the CC. You could move what I have here, k6li@arl.net, to the to line. You can move it to the CC. Completely up to you. You can have the call signs in the CC or in the to, completely up to you. In the send as, remember how last time we selected peer-to-peer message because we were sending to peer, and then the CC was grayed out. This time we're going to select the Winlink message. And that's going to make sure that it's addressed to a gateway. And when we do the demo in a little bit, we will actually show you how the two different messages look in the outbox. And the next thing is you post to outbox, just like we did last time. A couple of things, notes. Send as usually resets after you fill out a form submission. So if you have your default set to peer-to-peer, it'll reset to peer-to-peer. If your default set to Winlink message, it'll reset to Winlink message. So double check before you post to outbox after filling out a form. Ham calls, we already talked about that. Just enter a call, and multiples, semicolon separates them. So super easy to do. Winlink gateway selections, and this is the fun part about it. Up here, remember last time we didn't select a gateway, we selected a peer-to-peer session. The other person had to be in the same session at the same time. This time around, we use the top part of the selection drop-down, and these are all our Winlink, or they should properly be called gateway modes. So we've got Telnet, which is just internet. Packet, most of you are familiar with. Pactor, also, this is something that's very often used on HF. You can obviously use it on other bands as well. But very fast, comes with hardware modems. Robust packet, there are not a lot of gateways that do robust packet, and I think most of them here are on the East Coast. They're more popular in Europe, it seems. Winmore is being deprecated, meaning phased out over time. RDOP has replaced Winmore, so it's a direct successor, and then Vara HF, Vara FM, and Iridium Go if you have a satellite connection. So those are your sessions. And again, the open session button up here is what matters. This is a button. It may not look that way, but it's a button. So you need to click that after you make the selection here. You click this, and it opens it up. First, you select, in this case, direct. And I've got a packet Winlink session. You don't have that option in Vara FM because there are no digipeaters at present in Vara FM. But in packet, you do have digipeater options. So let's say you want to send directly to a gateway. You have a specific gateway that you know you can reach, simplex. Then you can either enter the information, enter the gateway address, in this case K6CHY-10, or the other option is you can go to channel selection and click on that. I'll show you on the next screen what that looks like. And then you click start. And that's it. If your radio is set up and the gateway is up and running well, you should be able to run this. Digipeaters are only available for packet. You would select a digipeater here where it says direct, and then you can enter the digipeater here in this address. In this case, KM6KAQ doesn't have a digipeater per se. What he has is sound modem. And so as long as he's got his signal link and his sound modem running, he's also digipeater, and we've digipeated right through the system before. As always, verify your frequency, that you're on the right frequency, and listen before you click start. Remember how we clicked the select channel a little bit earlier? In this case, a packet, it gives you this whole list of channels. The first time you do that, you won't see that list. Click on update table via internet, and then all the channels within 100 miles of your location, 160 kilometers of your location will pop up and will give you an idea of where you're at. In our first lesson, we said if you're an MCOM group, it's a good idea to put MCOM as a service code. Public is automatically there, but it'll also populate the MCOM group. And as a reminder, please, if you're going to use a gateway on a regular basis that's maintained by an MCOM group and is listed as MCOM, reach out to them and ask them whether it's okay, especially if you're another group. We want to be good neighbors, and we want to have a lot of fun with that. And then all you have to do is double click on any of these, and that'll just give you the information, and you have to manually set your radio to that frequency, right? All right, HF Winlink sessions, exactly the same thing. The difference here are twofold. One, you've got this channel selection that we just saw in packet. That's available. And, you know, the center frequency is what's actually the selector for this. However, let's just go through this. One, you enter the gateway address, and you can find the gateways through hitting channel selection. And again, next slide will show you what that looks like. Usually when you do the channel selection, which is what most of us do, you don't manually enter the center frequency, but you could enter all of this information manually, but it'll auto-populate it for you. And then you set the dial frequency on your radio, and keep in mind that digital modes on HF are always, by convention, upper sideband. So this is something that takes people a little, especially for 80 meters and 40 meters, when you're used to doing lower sideband. It's just one of those things that people need to rethink sometimes. And that's something you'll get used to really quickly. If you have CAT, computer-aided transceivers, then you can actually set up your radio to do this automatically. I know the 817 does it, the 71 does it, the 7300 most definitely does it. All the KXs do this, so keep in mind, this can be almost automatic for you. So when you change this, the transceiver changes, and off you go. And then, again, listen for clear frequency and click Start. Winlink on HF, couple of tips. Upper sideband, we just talked about that. ALC, you want to adjust your ALC, 1/3 for VARA HF, less for RDOF. Most systems, most digital modes tell you to show no ALC. VARA is a little bit different, and you can experiment with volume. Again, it's all about the audio settings when you do that. Filters, the best thing to do is set a 3 kilohertz filter for wide modes, especially for VARA. That'll make for a much better signal. One of our hams was extremely successful hitting gateways and a peer-to-peer session in South Carolina. And he thought it was a very slow connection until we adjusted his filter from 500, to hertz to 3 kilohertz. So it made a huge difference because it was narrowband to wideband, and so that worked out really well. So VARA HF comes now in two flavors, 500 hertz and 2300 hertz. RDOP in 500, 1000, and 2000 hertz. So just keep that in mind, and the filters can be set accordingly. And here's the channel selection for HF. The nice thing is it gives you here on the right a predictor about how likely you are to hit this, and you can update this information both through the forecast, for the update via internet. It'll recalculate that. You can do the forecast, and so just keep that in mind. There's a very close one here, Kevin Sherwood's AJ7C gateway, which is a powerhouse. He not only has pretty much all the major digital modes for FM and mesh, but he also is a hybrid gateway, so he can forward messages outside of the area. Very powerful station. The Las Vegas station here, he's extremely powerful. Then there's Mike in Mexico. And again, this may change depending on your time of day, just like HF does. So keep that in mind. Now it also tells you whether it's 500 or 2300 mode. We talked about the path reliability estimate. So what can you reach with this? Let me give you an example here. Evan, WH6 ECG, does a lot of these tests on a regular basis because living in Hawaii, he understands that it may be paradise, but there are volcanoes, there are earthquakes, there are hurricanes. It's just a whole tourist from California. So you may have all these issues. And what I'm showing you here are his connections to the mainland, actually using a portable setup. So the most power he used for this was 30 watts. Keep that in mind. And he had really solid connections, and he actually passed 213 messages because that's the ultimate test of this. And he hit Alaska up here. He hit Tom N5TW in Texas. He hit N0DAJ in all these stations. Keep in mind, he has a lot of salt water to cross, so that makes for good bounce. But just keep that in mind. Not everybody will get this kind of a result, but I think it's very, very impressive to think about that this can be done. And he does this on a regular basis, so it's not a one-off. 20, 40, 80 meters has worked for him really, really well. On 5 watts and 15 watts, he can hit the other islands through Nevis, near vertical incident skywave communications. And between 10 watts and 50 watts, he's been extremely successful overseas. He hits Doug N0DAJ really well on 20 meters, for instance, so that adds that. And part of why I'm showing you this is to encourage you to experiment. Really important who you can hit throughout the year, because HF conditions, as all of you know, change. And all of this was essentially run on battery. So he actually takes all of his equipment off the mains and makes sure that he actually tests under conditions he would be operating under. And that's true knowledge, true power. Keep that in mind. You want to fight the way you train, and you want to train the way you fight. All right? And special thanks to Evan for doing this. He shares this information with us, and it's extremely valuable. And before we go on, I want you to take a pause. And I want you to stop, and I want you to think about what we've gone through right now in terms of moving traffic. You have the relatively wideband options of mesh, VARA FM. Then you have the slower modes like packet. And then you get into HF, where you're much more restricted. So as a good MCOM operator, please, please, please mind your downstream circuit capacity. What may work really well on a local level may not translate into forwarding messages, especially when you have hybrid gateways like Doug N0DAJ or Kevin AJ7C. That you send a message VARA FM to the gateway and it's 50K and it took less than a minute. But once it hits that HF gateway and that HF gateway is trying to pass that information on HF, depending on conditions, you may just completely slow this thing down to a crawl. it's one of those things to keep in mind. You want to keep your message sizes small, even if you can send large messages. So if you do want to experiment with VARA FM on 9600 and those higher speeds, do it peer-to-peer. Much safer for you, much safer for everybody else involved. And the nice thing is you get to experiment with somebody else and you both know you're in a high-speed session and you're not risking the gateway equipment. So please be mindful of that as you go forward. For those of you who have repeaters and have set up repeaters, for those of you who have gateways, set up gateways, you know what I'm talking about. You want people to treat the equipment with respect and be mindful, because when you really need it, you want it to be there. Let me give you a speed comparison here just to give you a size of the issue here. And this is bits per second. So in our mind, the slowest leg always determines the file size. So packet in this case is the slowest. And that kind of means 5 kilobytes per minute. That's where packet tops out. VARA FM wide, you're doing 80, 90, 100 kilobytes per minute, depending on how you're set up. So just keep that in mind. You do want to aim for somebody who's downloading this on packet because for whatever reason, maybe they're at a hospital and only the hospital station is available, and that has packet. Doesn't help them if you send them a file that takes them 20 minutes to download. Plus, it locks up your gateway, especially if it's a hybrid gateway. So just to give you an idea, 100 kilobytes per minute on VARA FM wide, VARA FM narrow, about 50 kilobytes per minute. So these are pretty large files. Actually, if you think about an average Word document, is like 20 kilobytes. VARA HF, when it's running really well, has backdoor type speed, so 20 kilobytes per minute are realistic. But again, the HF numbers I would take with a grain of salt because they change with conditions. So you may have a really good connection the first 10 minutes and then a really terrible one. So just keep that in mind. And packet VARA HF, 5 kilobytes per minute, although VARA HF 500 can be faster than this, but this is kind of a realistic scenario. So aim for these smaller file sizes. Of course, when you have Arden Mesh, then in this, at the lower level, 5 megabits per second, obviously all the others look. So be mindful when you're doing hybrid networks of this. And I want to impress this on you. It's really important to think downstream, because what works really well as a message size in Winlink on Arden Mesh will not work on packet. I guarantee you that. For operators that have experience, that's not an issue. They look at the file size before they send it, but keep that in mind. One thing you'll see with VARA FM and Arden Mesh becoming more popular is file size creep, and please remind your operators to keep the file sizes down. Gateways and sysops, and this is Doug, N0DAJ, and he's giving a presentation to us on Saturday, and that's his setup, and it's a really nice setup. Again, we'll talk about his station in a moment, but this is K6YZF, Robert, and this is his gateway, and I'm just showing you this real quick. This is where the gateway is located at his place. He's mainly VARA FM. He's got, in the last 21 days, I just looked it up yesterday, 24 people connected, and most of us connect multiple times to his gateway. He's got packet as a backup on the same frequency. He's running only 30 watts, and this is modeled on 30 watts, and he's got a 6 dB Omni. He's got a 100 amp hour battery backup and solar panels to feed that. So it's a pretty robust station. He also works professionally for a telecommunications company, so you should see his setup. It's super clean, all top cabling and everything. I want to point your attention to what he is covering, what the green area says up here. His one station on 30 watts is covering 9.2 million people. And keep in mind, Los Angeles County, with a little over 10 million inhabitants, would be the 10th largest state in the nation if it were its own state. So keep that in mind, the numbers of people he can cover. He pretty much covers every hospital in our area. And during the statewide medical health exercise last year, we directed pretty much all the traffic through his gateway because we could all pick it up. This should go into your design way before you set these things up if you want to do a gateway. I'm not saying you have to have a gateway. But if you do want to have a gateway, start thinking about it beforehand. How does this affect our area? Who can reach it actually? Makes a big difference. Like all our gateways, he also has a backup of the gateway on his laptop. What does that mean? That means if anything happens to the actual gateway, he can take the laptop, pop up another radio in the field, and have the gateway up and running. N0DAJ, Doug, I showed you the picture on the first slide of this. I just want to give you the 80 meter July coverage and just show you this is his HF coverage. Doug also has a hybrid gateway system, so he can do VARA FM packet locally, take that in and forward it to the outside world, to out of area via HF. And he's got VARA HF for that. Kevin uses a Pactor modem and VARA, and Doug uses VARA HF. I want to show you that it works really well, but I also want to show you how enormous his reach is on 80 meters, with his setup when the time of day is right. So just keep that in mind. These gateways are extremely powerful. Quick word about the elements of a Winlink gateway. RMS Packet is a piece of software you can get from the Winlink website, and that can be set up with VARA FM and Packet. You could certainly hook up a TNC to it. Most of us, however, would just use a SignalLink or DRA board, or if you're using an Alinco monobander, then I would say get a RIM 50 because it's RIM 9600 because it's plug and play. And essentially you run it both on the same thing. It requires that you train people, that they don't jump all over one another, especially people who've got a lot of Packet experience, because Packet figures things out as it goes, but VARA is sequential. So ideally your operators are experienced. If that's all you want to set up on a local level, and that's perfectly okay, because as far as I'm concerned, this is it. The local response is the most important. If that's what you set up, you provide that an internet connection, perfectly fine, and you're up and running. However, the internet is gone, it still works as a post office. So all your local operators can still connect to it and pick up their messages from a central point. And I think that's very powerful. If you want to add Arden Mesh or also Tri-Mode, and I'll show you that in a moment, you add RMS Relay, then RMS Packet can actually use RMS Relay to manage the connection to the internet, and it gives you some more options. Some of us are running RMS Relay because we also have mesh connections, so that gives us VARA FM, Packet, and mesh in one fell swoop. And then you can add Tri-Mode for all the AHF modes. And of course, you've got VARA, HF, RDOF, Pactor, and that also uses RMS Relay to connect to the outside world. And again, if that connection disappears to the internet, you still have the system running locally, and Tri-Mode can forward the information to other gateways that may still have an internet connection. All right, there are two available product suites to set up gateways, and I'm just telling you this for information. RMS Packet, Relay, and Tri-Mode by the Winlink development team. And then there's BPQ32 by John Wiseman, which is also extremely powerful. Some people like it because it also has BBSs and so on built in. And, it's kind of, if you wanted to use it on, for instance, Linux, you would use BPQ32, but on Linux, you would lose VARA HF, right? RDOF and Pactor probably would still work. But, just keep that in mind. Those are the options to run it. Most of us are right now running RMS Packet, Relay, and Tri-Mode. In our area, BPQ32 is the favorite of one of the hams that I respect the most, Martin HB9 AUR in Switzerland, and he's essentially running 2 computers and I think 9 radios last time I checked. So it can be done. Gateway success. Respect the gateways. Understand that you want them to be there just like the repeaters. You want them to be there when you need them the most. So limit your traffic, adjust your equipment properly, and listen before you transmit. Commit the time and the effort and money. Please do not set up experimental gateways. Do your experimentation on peer-to-peer, because nobody benefits from gateways that won't be around. We had one case where there was a gateway around nobody could reach. And that was really frustrating for people who were trying to learn Winlink, and some of them gave up. And it's only now that they're coming back that two operators in Aries LAX Northwest, which didn't have any gateways for a long time, set up really robust gateways, and it's been a big hit. But keep in mind, don't just put it in there and say, well, I turn it on whenever I feel like it. Either you advertise it and then make it available, or don't, because nobody has to run a gateway. There's also no reason to run 10, 12 gateways in an area. Perfectly fine to have 1 or 2 well-placed gateways, because in the end, if you have 10 gateways, nobody knows how to actually move the traffic. And if you lose the internet connection, how do you tell people which gateway to actually send the traffic to? And remember, the internet is lost. You can all pick up still from the same gateway. So it's actually better to have fewer robust gateways than to have 200 gateways. Then everybody has their own gateway. Nobody can pick up anything. So again, avoid setting up zombie gateways, as we call them, that don't actually exist, and advertise them and say, listen, I'll turn it on between 5 and 6 every 4th Wednesday of the month. That's not helpful to anybody, and it takes an enormous amount of work. By the way, the work in the gateway isn't in the setting up. That's actually done relatively quickly. It's in keeping it updated with especially Windows updates, keeping it secure, making sure it's running, making sure the power is running, that all the hardware is working, just like a repeater is. And you got to think about it the same way. It's not just the gateways, you also need to provide training for the people in your area to use them properly. That's your user base. So just setting up a gateway and then complaining nobody's using it is disingenuous, and I've heard that before. You also need to reach out to your local MCOM groups, to your clubs, and to show people how to use it and how to listen, how to not step on other people. And it makes for a much better experience for everybody, and people will really appreciate that. And please thank your sysops. The sysops are committing their own time and, in most cases, their own money to do this. So what they're doing is a true service to the community, and not just to their local communities, but to the regional communities. I just showed you N0DAJ's coverage map. The same true for Kevin, for K6SDR, for all these wonderful people that are setting up these gateways. Make sure to thank them, because it is a fantastic thing they're doing for all of us. Couple of parting thoughts, and then we'll get into the example. And on the left here, it's our Winlink coordinator and Aries LAX AAC, Jeff W2JCL. And that's actually a picture we took at the Medical Alert Center at the Statewide Medical. Exercises, regular exercises, sharpen your skills and help you experiment, especially peer-to-peer exercises. On air, people are less afraid to ask questions, and please foster that spirit where people get to ask questions. I've had situations where, sometimes as simple as the signaling power is turned off and somebody points that out, or somebody says, hey, listen, you sound a little off frequency, check your settings. Be encouraging of that. And again, peer-to-peer makes that much easier because you're doing the digital and the voice on the same frequency. Keep the exercises relevant, and that keeps people involved. So don't, do a checking exercise, yeah, I'm still alive, and move on. Give them puzzles to solve. Little exercises, and I like to create story exercises. Other people have different ways of doing it. But little stories to solve. Sometimes you make fun of the neighboring group, and then they make fun of you, and that's part of it. It's all in good spirit, right? One of the exercises, and we found that out during, actually one of the official exercises was, they wanted to evacuate hospitals, and we had no clue where to get the buses from. And after, in the hot wash the amateur radio hot wash, one of the DCS crew, LA County Sheriff's Department, said, well, we actually always have plenty of buses available, so you could have reached out to us. So we built that into an exercise, and the hospitals requested buses off the sheriffs. And that led to a couple of fun replies. One of them was, yes, we've got buses available, but some of them have shackles. Is that okay? Just keep that in mind. That's something you would actually have to discuss with your hospital. Is that okay? Peer-to-peer is a powerful training tool and troubleshooting tool. Winlink. Winlink is dynamic. That means use it often and stay current. By often, I mean at minimum once a month. And if you're not a regular user, set an alarm on your phone, on your calendar to remind you to run it, because they're constant updates. The forms are updated, the program's updated, features are added, etc., etc. What you don't want is to show up at an incident and your Winlink is so out of date that it doesn't work with anybody else's Winlink. Especially with forms, they kind of need to be compatible, so keep that in mind. Accounts expire after 400 days of non-use. So every time you use it, it resets that clock and it takes 400 days. But if you don't use it for 400 days, your account is expired. You show up in, I don't know, Puerto Rico, and next thing you know, it's like, well, it doesn't work. Well, have you used it? Well, I set it up 2.5 years ago and never used it. Keep that in mind. All your traffic is publicly visible for 21 days. There is a viewer, and all your traffic, that includes your peer-to-peer traffic. Any computer in this conversation gets an internet connection, it'll upload that traffic. So keep that in mind. Amateur radio, all our traffic is public. And that is something that you also want to tell your served agencies before you start setting up these elaborate systems. They need to know that. In a lot of ways, some of them are pretty happy about that. Some of them said, we don't want that. But either way, you have to accept it and move on. And with that, thank you from Aries LAX. In that case, we'll go into the exercise and we'll just show you how to do Winlink messages and post a message to Outbox and do a Winlink session, select the gateway, and then click Start to Send. But at this point, I want to break for a moment. I want to say, does anybody have any questions? Did I go too fast? Everything okay? Most of you are still awake. I don't see all of you, but
Well, Russell has his hand up.
okay. Go ahead, Russell.
KC2 LSB, take it away.
On the phone and has to unmute. Yeah,
there you go. Go ahead,
Gary.
Russell. We can hear you.
Russell, you're not there. Okay, let's move on to, we'll come back to Russell. Let's move on to John, WY7VAAF, Wyoming.
Okay, my question is, when you get your forms on to have to go to the hospital from your incident, how do they come to you? Are they already preloaded? Do they give you a disk with the information on, or a flash drive?
Yes, in our case, that's usually how it's been handled over the last couple of years. So some hospitals actually, one of the things we do is we talk with we bring the IT department in the conversation very early on, because IT can either be your biggest ally or your biggest enemy. And if they are in the conversation early on, they've been really, really supportive of what we do, because they understand networks, they understand digital, and so on. So some of them have just gone and bought these bags of USB drives, like 100 to a bag, and because they don't want the drive to go back from the radio operator to the hospital computer. So essentially, you get a little red bag, and when you're done with sending the traffic, you put it in that bag, and that gives them a record of what has been sent. And at the same time, they can either then choose to destroy it afterwards, or to have it cleaned and scanned for any problems. So just keep that in mind. That's a good question, but by and large, that's how it works. And all our data and hospital starts as spreadsheets. Every last item. So we can either send the spreadsheet directly, or we can copy and paste it. And if we have time, I'll show you how that's done too.
Okay, so in other words, they initiate the form and then you transfer it over?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay, Russell, are you ready yet? Hello, Russell.
KC2 LSB.
Well, let's pick up Dan then while we're waiting for Russell. Dan and KL7COO, take it away, Dan.
Well, good evening, everybody. Ollie, yeah, it's like when a dog gets a scent, you see a fish hook in their nose. I heard you say that the message viewer also displays peer-to-peer messages. So how does the message viewer get hold of the peer-to-peer if it's not going through a central message server?
Every computer just uploads it. Every computer that has an internet connection will upload it. The first time that happened to us in the peer-to-peer thing, let me tell you, we were shocked because we didn't expect that. We were thinking exactly the same thing.
Okay.
But the moment you hook it up, you fire up your Winlink, it'll just right upload it. And you could use the message viewer and take a look. You can actually search for peer-to-peer messages.
I was going to say I'm embarrassed to ask because it wouldn't take too long to figure it out by using the message viewer. But
Yeah.
All right, it just caught me unawares.
It's
That's why I like listening to you.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that, full disclosure, and I think it's important to also point that out to your agency. We tell all our hospitals that none of this is encrypted, and people will be able to see that. Most of them are actually pretty happy about that because that means there's a record. So it goes both ways. If you don't have anything to hide, and in fact, you want to say, listen, we tried the best.
Well, on the theory of 1 is none, 2 is 1, and 3 is me, the message viewer makes a handy 3 for the next 21 days.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, if you're a net control or a section emergency coordinator, you want to see what's going on. Falling on the message viewer, seeing the messages coming in live is extremely powerful. So keep that in mind. There are actually really positive reasons for using it.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Dan. Good question. This is always fun.
Yeah, Kim, are you out there in Hawaii?
Oh, KH7HO. Yeah, I just want to make a comment to reinforce what Oliver just said. We did a Vera FM peer-to-peer exercise last night, and that's the first time we did it. You need to practice. We had some challenges. Some of them were corrected on the air, but you're correct, Oliver. You need to practice, and peer-to-peer was the first really great exercise we did, and we learned a lot from it. Thanks to your support.
Oh, well, thank you, Clem. I have to say, Hawaii has been leading the efforts in so many ways. It's a whole lot of fun watching how quickly you guys come together and all the contributions the great state of Hawaii and all your radio operators have done to this. We wouldn't be today where we are without Hawaii. Just let me make sure that everybody knows that. All right, so let's go over to the demonstration on the other computer. Is that okay? So I'll have to look down because that's my other computer here. And this time around, we'll share the entire screen so you can see the whole kit and caboodle. And CAN6BKT, let's see. Great. And now somebody's on the frequency.
Oliver, do you want to go to 507?
Yeah, let's go to 507. Right. Thank you. Should be clear. Always have a backup frequency, right? Is this frequency in use? This is K6OLI. Is this frequency in use? This is K6OLI. And this K6OLI will conduct a few short exercises on this frequency. The cooperation of all radio amateurs is much appreciated. All right. Tom, are you ready? Let's start with a peer-to-peer session. I'll walk people through it real quick. Thank you so much. All right. Let me walk you through this one more time. And just as a refresher from last week, right? Let's first do a message. And let's say I want to send, remember we're into select template. And let's do an LA County form. It could be an ICS form, could be a check-in form. I'll just choose this because it's a little bit faster to do right now. And these are really unique to what it is we're doing. The bed of it, again, we're the size of a state, so we have our own systems here. As a reminder, you can actually save data. And for exercises, very often we then just load data. I'll just walk you through that step by step. In this case, I have one from our last exercise, and I'll just click open. And you see how that populates all the information. I can update the time if I want to. I'll scroll down. And always make sure that your date is updated, especially if you set your date in here. And just click on it and it'll update it. Again, Greg has made this really, really easy. You can add this is a P2P message drill. All right, just to show you, and I want to actually post 2 messages so you see the difference. We'll do submit. We click OK. And we can close this, the localhost 8001. Yeah. Let us see if I can go up there. Ah! Sorry. I need to move this down a little bit. Hold on. I'll close this. All right. And here's my message. I enter it for KN6BKT. And I want to send it to him as a peer-to-peer message. And I post it to Outbox. And I'll do that one more time. And I'll do it as a select template. And I'll do this. And I have it as a shortcut here. And I'll just do the exact same message. But this time I'll do it as a gateway message so you see the difference. All right? And we'll load the report. I'll try to do this a little bit quicker. Do we have any questions in the meantime?
Russell, you still got your hand up. Do you have a question? I'm going to lower, Russell, I'm going to lower your hand, and if you want to answer your question, ask the question later, go ahead.
And in this case, we'll just update the date, and we'll say gateway message. All right. And click submit, click OK. Close this, close that. Same message, address it to the same person, KN6BKT. And this time, I'm not choosing peer-to-peer message, I'm choosing Winlink message, okay? And then we post this to Outbox. I think whenever you do demonstrations, whenever you have to do demonstrations, show people what the difference looks like and show people where things can go wrong. I would strongly encourage you to do that. So here in the Outbox now, we've got 2 messages. One is addressed, they're both addressed to KN6BKT, they're identical, but one says peer-to-peer. So this is only sent peer-to-peer. And as you can see, the same addressee. Tom, do you want to connect with me or shall I connect with you?
Either way, what's your pleasure?
Okay, let's do Vara FM and I'll connect with you just to show how to push the message. Remember last time we did push and pull? This time I'm going to push the message to Tom. So Tom is in a Vara FM peer-to-peer session. So we go into our drop-down, we select the Vara FM peer-to-peer session, and then we click on Open Session. Remember, this is a button. I put in Tom's call sign, KN6BKT. Completely doesn't matter what you enter here. This is for your own fun. So 145.525. KN6BKT, K6LI, ready to send. All right. My Vara FM window is open here, and I'll just move that to the side a little bit. This is my session window right here. This is my modem window right there. And now I'm going to click Start. And I think you can actually hear it in the back. This is what Vara sounds like. You can see the connection. The constellation diagram here shows you it's a very solid connection, very clean. The more these look like lines, the better it is. Now we're passing traffic. All right. That was it. The whole message sent in no time, right? Copy that. K6LI. And here's the interesting part. It was addressed to KN6BKT, but it didn't send right now because that's a Winlink gateway message. But he picked up the peer-to-peer message, or I pushed the peer-to-peer message to Tom. So keep that in mind. Now we're doing the same thing, but instead of doing a peer-to-peer session, we're doing it through a gateway. So let's close this session here. Go to Vara FM Winlink. Don't confuse that with Vara HF Winlink. They're very different modems. You click Open Session. And in this case, like I showed you before in the demonstration, let me change the frequency here. There you go. We go to channel selection. I could update the table via the internet right now because I have a good internet connection. And it shows me all the available gateways. 9600 is a leftover. This should be wide now, but you know, so I'm running the only wide gateway in the area at present. But let's choose K6YZF-11, and you just saw a picture of Robert and his gateway and his coverage. I check, see whether the frequency is clear, sounds clear, and then we click Start. And again, our modem, and you can see how clean this connection is with him. So we're sending our messages always first. That's how the system is set up. And then it'll ask me, do you want to download these messages? Because we know we've got messages waiting. In this case, thank you to all of you who are submitting messages. I'm going to download them all. And by the way, I'm doing this on 10 watts. At the bottom here, look at this. We're using level 10. And for those of you who have a Signal-Link, I've got great news. Signal-Link sold in the last 2 years actually are capable of running 9600, and it's pretty easy to set up. So if you're interested in setting this up, we'll have a write-up available on the Winlink groups by hopefully this weekend. And it's very easy to do right now. This is a Signal-Link, and it was set up for Vara FM wide. How cool is that? All right. You saw 4 messages received, took absolutely no time, and these were all gateway messages. So let's choose the hospital situation report. This is what it looks like. I'll just widen this a little bit. But this is a full report, right? And thank you so much for sending this. This is a full report to be received. It took no time to receive this, right? Let's take another example here. There you go. W9DSR, thank you so much. And this is one of those things that just, an ICS 213 took no time whatsoever. 5 cases of diapers, always good to have if you have a lot of kids around, right? So thank you so much, Tom, for sending this. And then you can reply, and I should show you this real quick. How do I reply to a 213? You actually have to close the message. You can't, by the way, if you want to open a message again, and you know, sometimes you click on something else, you click on this and say it doesn't open, you have to click on the paperclip up here, right? And that opens the message up. I can't reply in here, right? It'll actually pop up and say, listen, you can't reply in there. So you close this, you highlight the message, and then you click reply to message. And that pops up the send reply template with all the information. And then you can write a quick reply. Thank you, Tom. diapers are on the way. There you go. And then reply by, that's usually, we had a question?
I thought you'd appreciate that last item.
I know. I'm always game for that. And then reply by is usually your agency contact, not necessarily you. So let's do make him a chief surgeon, and I like Dr. Schadenfreude because everybody can relate. And you click submit, you click OK. And Tom, you have the ability to check your email right now, right?
Yep.
And let's say I wanted to send this to KN6BKT as well, and I wanted to have a copy for myself. I could do K6OLI at arrl.net. Double check that it's a Winlink message because we're going through gateway, remember. And then we post to Outbox. And we've got the session still running in the back, so all we have to do is check the frequency. It's clear. We click start, and we connect to our friend Robert. And you can see the traffic here being passed. By the way, I could show you the exact same thing with packet. It will look almost identical. Does anybody want to see how to do that with packet on sound modem? Everybody's screaming here.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, let's do that. All right.
Please.
Then let's do a packet message real quick, and then we'll switch over to Tom, who's going to show you the HF, and he'll have quite a few messages waiting for him. First, I'll close my session. And by the way, because I'm net control quite a lot, I leave VARA FM and sound modem running concurrently, so it's not really an issue for me. For most users, they will automatically open that. They will use that check mark and automatically open that. Well, let's do a quick.
If anybody's interested, that message is already in my inbox, and I read it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tom. And Tom, where are you again?
Marion, Illinois, Southern Illinois.
There you go, from Southern California to Illinois in, light speed, literally. Thank you so much, Tom. This is fun. I could do this for hours, so stop me when I get overboard, okay? All right, let's do a quick message here. In this case, you can actually write your own little macros, just like for NBeams. Works really well. What gateway station did you connect with on VARA FM? In this case, it was K6YZF-11, and I'll connect with him again on the same frequency on packet. So KN6BKT, you know what, we'll send one to W9RY2 just because it's fun. And again, gateway message, again, we could use peer-to-peer. If I did peer-to-peer message, see what happens? The CC is removed, right? So let's go back to a Winlink message. Always double check. And then post to Outbox. And in the Outbox, we got one message, right? And you can always change something about a message. If you're in the Outbox, you double click on it. You want to add somebody else, K7REX, because it doesn't get enough spam from me. We'll go post to Outbox, so you can still make changes to it. And then let's do packet. So for those of you who follow our guide, packet will automatically open because in the settings here, I'll show you this real quick. You will have checked the automatically launch packet sound modem and directed it to where your sound modem is located. In my case, I've got packet already running, all right? So in this case, I will connect channel selection. I will connect to the same station that hosts our VARA FM gateway because he's got a packet backup. We feel it's very important to have a packet backup. So check for clear frequency. It's on the same frequency we are. We're not changing anything. K6YZF-11, we'll click. And then we watch what's going on. You can see we're connected to his MCOM gateway. We're passing, and by the way, the VARA, my signal link is set up for 9600 And I'm doing packet 1200 right now, and you can see it's actually pretty fast. So it works really, really well. You can see the traffic live as it comes across. Sound modem is brilliant. I'm using a test version here, version 1.10. The release version right now is version 1.05.
I should
And
mention, Oliver, for people that when you responded back with the 213, it automatically populated on the my screen into a 213.
it's wonderful, isn't it?
Yep. It's a great way to pass traffic.
Yep. And again, this is if you have that internet connection or if you have a gateway to the outside world, works really, really brilliantly. All right, and that was packet. That was it. If you wanted to do packet through a digipeater, all you would do is do a digipeater and enter it in here. And we're not going to do that because I want to get to the HF demonstration, right? But it could be CAN6 BKT4. If he's got sound modem running, he doesn't need anything else but sound modem and the signal link turned on. And there's a one-line change in the digipeater, in the sound modem settings, and that turns it into a digipeater. Super powerful. If you have a lot of people in the field, every station can be a digipeater on a signal link. So keep that in mind. But that's totally out there. And by the way, another thing you can do, and we do that quite a lot, we run sound modem, we run VARA FM, and we use pinpoint APRS for sound modem as a tactical APRS on that frequency. So we actually send updates via APRS as you go along on the same frequency. And as long as people are respectful and well-trained, it works really well. But that's, again, topic for another day. In that case, let me ask, does anybody have any questions before we move on to HF?
We're doing pretty well in chat here, Oliver. Go ahead.
Okay, well, thanks again, Tom, for the traffic. In this case, I will stop my share. And Tom, CAN6 BKT, take it away.
Okay, let me see if I can share my screen here. There we go. Okay, can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So let me just bring up the windows here. So my setup here is I have an ICOM IC7300. I'm running a 8010 NFED half-wave antenna that's not all that high up in the air. It's flung up in the trees in my backyard. And I'm running barefoot. Actually, I'm running about 25 watts here. I don't have an amp, so the max I could get on this thing anyway is 100 watts. As Oliver mentioned, on the 7300, it's super simple to set up the cat control. It's literally, and actually I'm not using a signal link. I'm using the built-in sound card on the IC7300. But it's super simple to set up the cat control on this thing. It's kind of set it and forget it. So let's go take a look at this is the channels that we could look at. For whatever reason, I think it's because of the takeoff angle of my antenna, AJ7C, which is my closest gateway, I cannot hit because I think I just bounced right over him. So we can try, let's see, this is fun. Let's try and hit Mike XE2BNC over in Tijuana. So I just click on that. That automatically moved the frequency over to 3.591. And I'm going to listen, make sure everything's clear there, and let's start. Okay, sounds like it's going here. So down at the bottom, you look in VARA, it says connecting to XE2BNC. So this shows the station bearing 150 at 202 kilometers. And I don't have a great connection with him, but it looks like it'll work. looks like stuff is going to come in here. There's our constellation there. So I've got about 1, 2, 3 messages. Okay, so there's my messages. I'll download them. That's 1 down, 1, 2 to go.
And of course, this is a great test because he now has to download all the messages I just sent him, so you can kind of see the you can see the difference.
And see my signal to noise ratio kind of pop down there a little bit. I'm running at level 4, which is 175 bits per second. So bear that in mind when you're dealing with HF. It's going to be obviously slower than on VHF or UHF.
And I think Tom also demonstrates right now the importance of thinking downstream. What you saw, what we sent locally really, really quickly, depending on the band conditions, may actually take longer on HF. And, you know, if you have really good band conditions, that goes really quickly. But, you know, if band conditions change, and they might, keep that in mind. That's part of the training.
And it's picked up here a little bit as HF propagation is wont to be. All right, looks like we're about done here. And looks like we're finishing up. Three messages received. It took me 4 minutes and 27 seconds. So I just made the 5 minutes. And that's it, and we're done. So if we take a look at my Winlink inbox here, here's our 3 messages. That's the one that Oliver sent me, the bed availability report. And there's the 213. And last but not least, there's the check-in. So that's it. HF is very, very similar to VHF or FM, but it's just quite a bit slower. Let me go ahead and stop my share. That's it.
Well, thank you so much, Tom, KN6BKT. Are there any questions for Tom right now, or is this pretty straightforward?
Chris has his hand up. Chris has his hand up. Take it away, Chris.
Tom,
on that Winlink session, it said channel free and your QSO took place. Oftentimes I see that the channel's busy, especially when there's a lot of QRM. How valid is that? If you're not hearing that digital handshake, maybe there's some RIDI or some CW going on nearby. What do? Do you just not try it?
Yeah, you know, it's tough, and I understand that. Yeah, it's oftentimes you can't hear it. I will often try a different channel,
Okay.
and then come back
I
to
mean,
it. Yeah.
last time I tried it, everything that was listed as green or acceptable
Yeah.
for that period of time, they all showed busy.
You can
So I
you
don't
can
know
also
whether
yeah.
you know.
You can also, what I do oftentimes is lower the gain a little bit, my receive gain, and that will oftentimes clear up that channel busy.
RF gain, okay.
The RF gain, yeah. So what I do is so it's on my 7300, so it's just the RF gain is just tickling 1 is kind of where I like to have it, and that tends to, at least on my rig anyway, tends to clear up the channel busy issue a little bit.
Okay, so it's not necessarily that gateway is being used by somebody I can't hear. It's probably other QRM. Is that right?
Most likely, and if it is, you know, you kind of do the best you can, right? It's going to be you can't if you're not hearing it, you're not hearing it. So,
Tom, you answered my question. Thank you.
Sure.
Before I take any more hands here, Lee, do you have something to bring up on chat?
Yeah, I have one. Steve has been in here answering questions, so this is a well taken care of chat here. But the most recent question is from KC4OJS. Oliver, could you explain how to set up a Digi with a little bit more detail?
Sure. Takes no time whatsoever. Let me do that real quick. And let me make this larger so I can share my screen. Share the whole screen. It's so much easier. Alrighty. I wanted to show you this, but we'll do that some other time. All right. Sound modem. The first thing to do is usually to stop sound modem before you do any of this, because if you don't stop sound modem, then it won't take. So understand, I'm keeping sound modem. I'll just minimize it, but I'm keeping it running because mine's already set up. I have a modems folder where I go there. In this case, let's say the sound modem 110. Every one of you has one of these folders right now, if you're using sound modem. And here's the ini file, right? So you right mouse click on that. Bear with me. And you open with, in most cases, it'll be Notepad. I'll use Notepad++ because it's easier to see. But most of your cases, it's going to be Notepad, and it works exactly the same. And here are all the settings that you made in sound modem. You scroll down to the AX25A. That's important because there's a B here. If you set it on the B, it won't work, because most of us don't use the B channel. And then down here it says My Digi Call. And all you need to do to make that work is to enter your call sign. And by convention, we use call sign -4. That's just what we use in our convention. Can be anything you want behind that, but we use K6OLI-4. I know that Tom is KN6BKT-4, so I don't have to guess, but that's a convention that we use. Enter that. Click Save after you're done, and then start your sound modem, and that's it. That's it. Close that, and your sound modem's up and running, and it does digipeating. I mean, is that super easy, or is that super easy?
Thank you, Oliver. This is from KC4OJS, and thank you. That's the information that I needed.
Okay, perfect. And you know, I'm glad. Again, one of our key concepts is keeping it simple is better than complicated, because I mean now we've got 20 digipeaters before we had 2. So it's really powerful in that respect. All right, I'll stop my share now, and we had more questions for Tom. Sorry.
Okay, Lee, were you done? Lee, were you done? She's looking.
Sorry, my PTT quit working there. Yes, that is it for now. Thank you.
Okay, let's pick up Steve, K4CJX in Tennessee.
I just wanted to make a comment, two comments. One, when you look on HF at the propagation guide, that is a guideline. That is a program that we use that came from Voice of America. It has a lot of elements that we do not pay any attention to because it would take 20 minutes before you could get a frequency chosen. So the propagation table is a guideline. There are many times when it's totally red and it says there's absolutely zero propagation and a station can be booming in here. Not very often, but every once in a while. Secondly, on the busy channel detection, the busy channel detection has a lot to do with the protocol. It also is a guide. If you don't hear anything and you have decent hearing and you listen really carefully and you don't hear anything, go ahead, especially if you're in the subject we're dealing with. Go ahead, because 90% of the time, sometimes QRN causes it. Sometimes a bit from the cosmos can tell you it's busy. You have the option of overriding it. Just use your judgment. It isn't written in black and white. That's it. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Steve, for also the answers in chat. In chat, and you know, this is exactly what this is all about. This is a group effort. There are a lot of talented people out there who have done a lot of experience and you know, are willing to share this. So understand you're never alone in this, and there's tons of good information. I strongly encourage everybody to go to the Winlink groups on Google and, you know, join that, because most of the questions will be answered in there already if you use the search function. And if you're really stuck, you know, chances are there'll be somebody who can help you. It's a really talented group of people all around Winlink. So strongly encourage you to.
Oliver, I've been doing this since 1999, and I'm amazed at what you're teaching here. You must spend some time on this. I'm very impressed. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve.
Great.
You know, it's always fun working with you.
Okay, let's pick up Don before we go forward here.
Yeah, when you CC somebody in a message to a specific email address, let's just say yahoo.com, is it identified in that email that it comes from Winlink?
Yes, and there's actually a disclaimer that's automatically added saying that it is from an amateur radio account and that the information is publicly viewable. And I think it's a good thing. But it's definitely, yeah, it's definitely identified as that.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, may I add one last thing here?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, Oliver. When you send from Winlink, when you send an email, that email is in your personal whitelist. And you can go to the Winlink website and log into your account and view that. And I don't know whether you've talked about the /WO2K in the subject line for somebody that provides an email that has never received an email from a Winlink user, and they want to email that Winlink user. If you put 2 // WL2K in the subject line, it will bypass the whitelist and the restriction, because if not anybody can just email into your account, and that's intentional. We don't get a lot of spam that way, so that's very intentional. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, I mean, none of us ever want to be in a situation where we're trying to send resource requests for our EOCs or our hospitals, and all of a sudden we get some offer from some, potentate somewhere on a different continent says that somehow we got millions of dollars, or got all the other spam that's floating out there. So that's a very good point. But it takes training on both sides. I think the easier way is the way that Steve said earlier. If you have people that you expect to communicate with, send them an email with Winlink. That'll put them on your whitelist, and they can actually email you back. And that's, I think, the easiest way of doing that.
Or you can go in and do that manually if you really want to go to all that trouble.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, and there was a question about the Flex, and I'll just do that real quick. I know that people use Flex radios with this really easily because a lot of people own them for digital work. And then gateways can beacon. They could, but most of them don't because it's just unnecessary traffic. Also, the RMS packet stations have an option to beacon. Don't set that up because it's just annoying, especially if you're doing VARA FM. So nobody sets that up really anymore. All right, back to you, Dan. And I think we're ready to wrap this up.
Yeah, we got one more here from Paul, KM4PT. Go ahead, Paul.
Just a real quick question. We do a weekly check-in and I use VARA FM. And I put out a canned message. It's the same message every week. All I do is change what my power, whether it's commercial or battery or solar or whatever, and also the date. Can I use the same message? I post it to the outbox, I send it, and then it winds up being as a sent message. Can I go back in and tap on that sent message for the next week and just change the date and whatever power consumption I'm using?
Well, if you're using the check-in template, you can save the regular information and just load it. That's pretty much a feature in almost all the templates now. So if you just have one that I would name canned, check-in canned, and then just double-click on that, update the time and date, then resend that. So exactly the same way I showed you. There's a save in the bottom left, and there's a load in the top right for a lot of these forms. And that's intentional because it makes it really easy if you're deployed at a specific site and you need to send the same type of data over and over again, and you just fill it in.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure thing. All right. With that, I think we've answered everybody's questions. We would like to say thank you to all of you who joined us for this journey. It was a lot of fun. Special thanks to Tom K&6BKT for showing us the HF side of things. To our friend Steve, who's done this for a very long time and has been extremely supportive, K4CJX. And of course to Lee for moderating, Dan for organizing this, and Barry and Tom in Illinois for sending messages, and everybody who's doing this, please feel free to reach out. You know how to get a hold of us, and we hope you experiment and you hope you have a fantastic time doing this. Understand you don't need super expensive equipment for most of this. Probably any equipment you have at home will work. And as we go along, please join us in this journey. It's a whole lot of fun. And with that, I'd like to say 7 threes and thank you so much. And Dan, if it's okay with you, I'd like to leave the net.
All righty, Oliver. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it. Great show. Ed Sullivan's words, really, really great show. And I thank everybody that participated. We had a good turnout here. One more time for anybody got any quick questions. Lee, you watch one and I'll watch the other and see what we pop up with.
Nothing that we can answer in this session. I think there's more technical questions as we go along, especially with the Flex and some other radios. So, okay, Dan, COO's got his hand up. Go ahead, real quick, Dan.
I'll catch up with Ollie later. I had a question for him about where to get 110 because I looked on the UZ7HO and only found sound modem 105. Different story. Is there any way you can include the chats as Zoom preps them when you post the recordings on Vimeo?
Yes, I can do that. I get everything that's downloaded and I go through and I delete the private ones. People send me all these wonderful messages and then I make a file out of it and I could do that.
Well, I hate for you to have. No, I'm just talking about the chat as it went down during the session. So anyway, you can easily and if Vimeo won't accommodate hosting it, can you just send a copy of it along when you send the follow up with the URL for the Vimeo?
That's what I'm talking about. That's how I do it. When the video comes down, the recording, it also downloads the chat session, so then I can make that into a file. Send it out.
All right, because that's really useful a lot of times, and I'm appreciating what you're doing more and more every week. So,
well,
don't stop.
They're trying, and you guys keep showing up. So, what the heck, we're having fun. Okay, unless there's anything else, let. I got this warning saying that I was muted. I didn't know that. All right, let's shut this baby down. Everybody have a good one. I'll see you guys next week. There's more of this to come.
73 Sewell. Take care. Thank you, Oliver. Tom.
Good night. Bye-bye.
73.
Yeah, the audiences are getting better too. Bye all.